So thank you everybody for joining today. My name is Chelsea Fergursky and I am one of the product marketing managers here at Ottimate. Thank you for joining us today for our Future of Invoice Processing webinar. Just a few housekeeping rules. If you have any questions, please submit them in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we will go ahead and answer those towards the end of our webinar. If for some reason we don't have an answer to your question, we will get back to you after the actual webinar is completed. In a few minutes, we will have a poll that will appear on your screen, and we'd love for you to participate. And last but not least, we are recording this webinar and we'll send you a copy once it is over. So with that, I will kick it over to Patrick and Swapnil to get us started.
Awesome. Thanks, Chelsea. Hi, everyone. I'm Swapnil Patil, Senior Product Manager at Ottimate. So I work across teams to help solve one of the biggest challenges in account payable, which is how do we remove inefficiencies without compromising accuracy or control. So this session is not just about tools, but it's about understanding or rethinking our approach to AP, which we call accounts payable. Now, specifically, how AI can help balance between speed and accuracy that we'll see in the upcoming slides or session. So with that, I'll pass it to Patrick.
Hello, everybody. Thanks, Swapnil, and thanks everybody for joining today's webinar. My name's Patrick, and I'm the Director of Finance at Ottimate. Here, I manage the full cycle of F&A responsibilities: invoicing, payments, billing receivables, budgeting, forecasting, taxes, compliance, lots of internal and external financial reporting. So there are probably lots of you on this call today who have similar roles to me, or maybe you specialize more on the AP and the payment side. Anyway, we've got a great mix of professionals on the call, and I'm excited to be part of such a group. In addition to working for Ottimate, I also run a separate small accounting practice for local restaurants. So I'm not only an employee here at Ottimate, I'm also a customer that uses our AP automation software, and we'll talk more about that soon. I think we should begin by defining what AP automation means. At a high level, when we talk about AP automation, we're referring to the process of using technology to streamline and automate tasks within the AP process, such as invoice processing, approval workflows, and payments, instead of relying on manual entry. And now I'd like to kick things off with a quick poll. So for this poll, I'd like you to consider what the biggest advantages of AP automation software might be, or maybe just what first pops up in your head when you think about this type of software. Is it faster invoice processing? Is it reduced errors and manual work? More reliable, accurate books? Increased visibility and control? Or number 5, which is a perfectly good answer, you're not sure yet, and you're here to learn. So take a few minutes or a few moments and type some of your answers in. Again, there's no right or wrong answer here. This poll's just to get you thinking about what AI can do for invoice processing and maybe for your organization. So please add your answers in, and we'll take another moment to get some more answers in. Here they come. All right. Great. This is wonderful. Looking at some of the early results, what's interesting is that a lot of people look to be gravitating towards number 1 and 2, which is faster and more accurate processing. But don't get me wrong, these are certainly big advantages for any finance team. But at Ottimate, we think the true benefits lie closer to the 3rd and the 4th choices, which are in the areas of reliability and trust. This is where the right automation software can really transform the AP process. And today, I'd like to tell you about some of my experiences running an accounting practice that uses this software. As I mentioned earlier, I run a small accounting practice for local restaurants. Before my finance career began, I was actually a restaurant owner and operator. So this accounting practice, it's a good way for me to stay connected to the industry and to my past life. And it means I can hopefully bring a specialized experience to my clients. There are likely some folks on this webinar from restaurants, or maybe from the larger hospitality sector. By the way, feel free to drop a note in the chat letting us know what type of industry you represent. It'd be interesting to see what types of folks we have on the call. Even for those of you in non-restaurant or hospitality industries, I think some of my experience will be applicable. Now, my firm focuses on mostly high-end restaurants, the sorts of places that have Michelin stars, elaborate tasting menus, and massive wine lists. So not your average meal out with the family, or at least not for my family. Even though these are very, very fancy restaurants, they face the same pressures and some of the financial challenges as any other restaurant, no matter how casual or fancy. They worry about things like rising prices of goods, staffing shortages, high labor costs, and especially now, an uncertain economic environment that can impact things from supply chains to consumer spending. But in other ways, my restaurants at the very highest end of dining, they operate differently when it comes to finance and accounting. And one particular challenge comes from the sheer volume of vendors that these restaurants manage and the number of invoices that they receive. Now, some restaurants might just have a few vendors they buy from. One for meat and seafood, another for produce, maybe one for dry goods and cleaning supplies, and another for beverages. But for high-end restaurants, the vendor landscape, it's much more complicated and it changes much more often. So it's not uncommon for my clients to receive a dozen or more invoices from different vendors in a single morning. Just for wine alone, and I just checked a few purchase histories this morning for some of the restaurants that I work with, they'll have 50 or 60 different wine vendors in order to stock their cellars. And chefs, they'll often buy a single ingredient from a specific vendor. Caviar from one company, Kobe beef from a specialty importer, and the day's catch, maybe from a local fisherman. Frequent menu changes mean that these restaurants also have to juggle a bunch of different suppliers depending on the time of year and whatever they're serving that week. One of the biggest benefits of automation software is being able to easily manage these suppliers. I can see purchase history and GL and invoice details by vendor with a few clicks of the mouse. I can set up GL and departmental mapping rules by vendor to make sure that invoices are all hitting the right expenses and getting the correct departmental allocations. And this type of smart mapping, I can also apply it to specific line items for each vendor, which means that restaurants don't have to manually code each invoice they get. It's all embedded in the system, thanks to the mapping rules we've created. And new vendors, they're automatically flagged by the system. So I know when I need to set up new payment terms or request a W-9 from a vendor or enter any discounting terms. Once these vendors are entered in the system, I can go to the vendor center where I can easily see all their payment profiles and what types of payments have been issued, whether it's checks, ACH payments, or credit card payments. I can also see links to their invoice history and review and edit any of the mapping rules that I've created. And that's all in one centralized dashboard. Having this type of centralized AP system also makes communication within the accounting department a lot easier. Using an in-app notification system allows you to easily tag your colleagues or ping them on any questions you might have about a specific invoice. So you don't have to scan an invoice and send an email if, for example, you aren't sure how a new vendor's invoice was coded. Instead, you can simply flag an invoice with a message to your colleague, and the history of that communication will always be pinned to that invoice in the system. But no matter how powerful your AP software is or how diligent your AP team is, there are always going to be cases of missing invoices. One of my favorite features of our automation software is the statement reconciliation tool. This tool, it identifies any missing invoices or mismatched invoice amounts on vendor statements. So you don't have to manually cross-check your ERP against dozens of lines on a vendor statement. This tool works instead by instantly referencing the invoices that you've already uploaded to the system. And you can then use this tool to send messages to vendors about any discrepancies or missing invoices, rather than having to start a separate email thread or make a phone call. And that's a big time saver for me during the monthly close process. And it gives me a certain peace of mind around proper accounting for invoices and for vendor payments too. Now, another issue that restaurants face is high turnover. And this includes the fine dining establishments that I work with. In fact, it's probably one of their most difficult challenges. Even chefs and managers of the most famous restaurants often move to another restaurant after a few years. The support staff for the back of the house and the front of the house, and that's all the cooks, the dishwashers, bartenders, and the servers, they have an even higher turnover rate. Now, I hope staff turnover isn't as big of a problem for all of you on this webinar, but it's still an issue that confronts all of us at one point or another. For my restaurants, we don't really have a formal accounting team in place. Instead, it's myself and a revolving team of chefs, maybe some managers, and the restaurant owners. And all of this is done remotely, as we're rarely in the same physical location. I'm usually here in my office. An assistant cook could be uploading invoices on his phone one morning at the restaurant. A chef could be approving kitchen invoices from her computer after a long dinner shift at home. And the restaurant owner could be finalizing the latest batch of vendor payments from his home during the day. What makes this arrangement possible is the user roles and the permissions that are built into AP automation software. You can use the most basic permissions for simple assignments, things like uploading or line item mapping. So certain users can only upload invoices, but they can't make any edits or approve anything or issue any payments. Other roles allow you to make edits and approvals, but only for invoices from certain vendors or within certain departments, or maybe for certain GL codes. That way the wine team doesn't have to worry about any kitchen invoices and vice versa. And you can also set up specific payment approval workflows so that certain users can issue payments, but they can't approve them, or others can approve payments up to a certain amount or for certain vendors, after which they would need to be approved by an admin type user. And of course, I can customize these roles and approval policies however I need to. I can add multiple approval levels for invoices or payments above a certain dollar threshold, for example. And I can make sure that approval workflows move in a specific order. For example, the chef has to approve each invoice before I can approve it for export into our ERP system. Since I'm the de facto controller for these restaurants, it's this ability to create custom user roles and permissions that takes a lot of stress out of the high staff turnover. If someone quits their job on the spot, I can just turn off their system access in seconds. A new beverage director starts tomorrow? Perfect. Let me know her email and I'll set her up with upload-only access right away. A line cook was maybe recently promoted to kitchen manager? Great. I can easily upgrade his permissions to allow him to now edit, approve kitchen invoices under $2,000. These are just some examples from the past few months that I can think of. I'm sure everybody here on this webinar has their own controls in place and their own accounting policies. Maybe you, like me, struggle with trying to make the approval process as efficient and secure at the same time. This is just one area where AP automation software can really improve your finance department, no matter its size or the industry you are in. With that, I'd like to thank you for your time today, and I'll turn things back over to you, Swapnil.
Awesome. I think those were some amazing insights, Patrick. Thanks a lot. Hey, everyone. So let's understand how should you be approaching AP. So most teams worry about speed, right? Now, obviously, speed matters. Like you have faster approvals, quicker payments, and fewer touches, right? But speed is not the core issue here. What really keeps people up at night is trust. They worry if my approvals are compliant, are my books accurate, or am I ready for audit happening at any point in time, right? Now, we have spoken with dozens of finance teams from single location hospitality businesses to even multi-location enterprises. And story is often the same. They're buried in manual workflows. They usually are not sure if proper GL mapping rules are being followed or not. They often find out about these issues after the month, after the books are closed. Now, that's really not an automation, right? It's basically doing firefighting. Now, manual GL coding is still one of the biggest contributors to financial errors. One mistake can throw off your reports. It can create a wave of reclasses, or worse, can lead to compliance issues. A slight delay in payments can cause major interruptions to your businesses. Let me give you one classic example. So one of our product leaders used to work at a luxury retail organization. Now on Black Friday, which is supposed to be the biggest sales day of the year, the flagship store was locked for a few hours by the landlord. You know why? Over an $1,100 rent invoice, which was unpaid. It was sitting in someone's inbox. They didn't open it. That got delayed. And all of this led to obviously missed payments, lost revenue, reputational damage, and obviously a fire drill for the finance teams. All of this could have been easily avoided had there been some automation in place. Now, real opportunity isn't about going faster, it's about going smarter. And that's where the next segment comes into play. So we want to understand what's the AI's role here, right? You might be wondering what is special about AI. So let's get into it. You can have invoice in any format, right? It could be structured, unstructured, PDF, scans, you name it. The AI part or the AI powered system can understand invoice format just like a human would. That's the beauty of it, right? So it will predict the GL code using your own historical data. And more importantly, it will flag anything which it sees something as off. And then you are the ultimate decision maker. So AI is giving you suggestions, but ultimately it is you and your team who are in control. So see, these models learn from your own behavior. For example, they know how you think about your vendors, departments, or even your spend categories. Now, think of it like giving a second brain to your team, which will help you understand how the invoices have been coded in the past. And it will obviously learn also over a period of time, right? Now, this is what we call as predictive coding. And for our early adopters, the results have been really encouraging. So we have seen automation accuracy increase from 85 to 90% on an average to now close to 99%. Now that means you're looking at fewer errors, fewer reclasses, and obviously cleaner closes, right? That brings me to the next segment, which is about showing you a video about how all of this thing really pans out, where you will actually understand what I'm saying. In front of you is how an AI handles the real invoice. So if you see this invoice, it is having some stains, there is some handwriting there, some scratches being there, some edits being made, right? Now, it's not your classic perfect PDF file or clean file, right? Which you usually expect it to. It is having a lot of manual edits being done and things like these. So now see closely, right? How it is going from left to right, reading and capturing all the details, right? So it even understands all the scratched out prices, and it will even make sure all the manual changes are captured, right? So as you can see, it has captured clearly item name, SKU, unit, price, etc. And it also catches the right total, tax, amount due, etc. Right? So another point I want to make here is it's not only about text extraction. It's also about understanding the context here. As you can see, paper towels has a unit pack. Sort master shelving has a unit case. That is not there in the invoice, but it understands because it knows what the context is. And that's the beauty of AI, right? So, all these little things really matter because they affect your GL codes, they affect your cost centers, and they affect your contracts as well, right? And you know what the best part is? The best part is that all of this is happening in real time. You don't need to think about, okay, I need to spend some time, figure out if everything is coded perfectly or not. you don't need to worry about it. The system is doing it for you completely. And this is where we are saying that this is where speed meets confidence, right? Because invoice automation only works if it works in real life and not just in perfect file, right? So with that, I want to introduce you to another segment, which is a very interesting one and something which is close to my heart. It's about invoice trust score, a smarter way to prioritize what matters. So why we are talking about this, right? Because you might have faced this problem a lot where you might be thinking, am I paying attention to all the invoices? Why do I need to do that? Is there a better way to prioritize my invoices? Isn't it? Now, we get it that not every invoice deserves the same attention. Like if you have the same, let's say some are routine vendors, they have same amount, maybe same vendor, same GL. Some could be unexpected. You can say they have it's a new vendor, odd amount, or maybe uploaded by someone you have never seen. Now this is where trust score comes into play, right? It basically asks you these three questions. Have you seen this vendor before? Is this amount typical for this vendor? And is this uploader someone who's handled this kind of a spend? Now, based on that, it gives you certain trust score. Think of it like a spam filter. Now, not everything is bad, but not everything is trustworthy either, isn't it? So let's understand from the example perspective. At the top screenshot, you have high confidence. At the bottom, you have low confidence. Just imagine you have, let's say, multiple invoices coming from your regular beverage supplier, right? Now it is, let's say, the same pricing, same tax structure, even the upload was done by your general manager himself. So, it's pretty safe. There is no risk. It's high confidence. This can actually flow without requiring human intervention, isn't it? Versus this, look at the bottom one. This is a known vendor itself, but here the amount is significantly outside the expected range. And another strange thing, there is no tax, or rather zero tax. So even though it was uploaded by your, let's say, EDI process, the system thought this is some kind of basically system thought something is off. And then based on that, it told you this is a risky invoice or it has a low trust. So based on that, you can take a decision. So what we are trying to say here is, with trust score, ultimately you are still the decision maker, but it is really guiding you to focus on what really matters, right? Now, we believe like AP teams in the multi-location businesses need to focus their energy mainly on exceptions rather than focus all the energy on all the invoices that come in. So that's why we feel invoice trust score is really a smarter way to prioritize what matters. And with that, I want to take you to the last segment of this webinar, which is how would implementing AI into your AP process affect you? So I have a few questions for all of you to reflect on. First is, have you ever had to reopen the books because of a misclassified invoice? Or let's say, ever had any material misstatement? Then how often do you manually reclass after the month ends? Also, are you still chasing people to figure out the right GL codes? And lastly, are your vendors all spread out or they're all concentrated in one maybe high risk region? Now, all of this, if that is sounding familiar to you, let me tell you, you're not alone. We have seen many customers face this problem. So when you are looking at missed GL codes or manual reclasses or approval stuck in limbo, that is something which we have seen happening across. So this is exactly where AI can step in. It can fix the errors fast. It can let routine invoices flow through easily. And it can give your team space to think on what really matters. And that's what we say, what really an intelligent AP automation should be. Lastly, I want to close this with saying AI really isn't about replacing people. We believe AI is about reducing the noise so that you and your team can focus on what really matters. So with that, I would like to say thanks a lot for listening in to me and Patrick. Really appreciate your time. Over to you, Chelsea.